All right, so the next passage we're going to look at is a poem. And as with all poems, we need to put our poem hat on. Poems have, generally speaking, more unique characteristics than a regular passage, a so called nonfiction, fiction kind of passages. That said, there's overlap between the two. So when we look at a poem, we don't throw out everything else we know about literary devices. There's still going to be a main idea, there's still going to be characters, there's going to be a setting, there still might be a theme, all those kind of things. We have to look at turning points, the tone of the passage, all that comes into place. But there's usually additional things that we have to look for, like a lot of repetition sometimes. The structure of a poem is slightly different than a normal paragraph. Oh, I use the word slightly, maybe not as strong as I just say. It's different. Let's remove that. I said slightly. Um, and there's normally an extra level on a poem, a figurative an aspect to it that is not always the case on a regular passage, a non-poem passage. That said, just like I said, you should use all the literary devices when you're doing a poem. When you're doing a non-poem, you should also be considering a lot of things like repetition, figurative language. It's actually in a lot of fiction and science fiction, figurative language. We kind of are so used to it that we still need to interpret a lot of that to really understand the story. Again, there's going to be a theme in your poem. It's usually deeper in the sense that there's going to be metaphors, okay, and similes, um, general topics that come up are love, the circle of life, the journey through life, some adversity issue, um, things like that. And then there's general stuff as well. So it doesn't always have to be about love and things like that. Um, there's usually a lot of symbolism to it, though, and we really need to read a poem slightly different than non poems. All right, so let's jump into this. So the first thing we're going to look at is the title. It's called Experience. Titles don't always help us, but sometimes they throw us a bone to try to maybe keep us aligned. Sometimes the titles are esoteric. Sometimes titles, like especially of a movie, is clickbait, and you really have to go deep to kind of make sense of a title of, say, a movie. But a movie is a commercial enterprise that's trying to use, other mechanisms to taunt us. So these are a little more appropriate, but they might make us think. So remember, these are thinking exams. These are thinking passages, right? So there's no other point to give it to. So when we're talking about being tested on reading comprehension, we're going deeper than normal. We're not just reading this for enjoyment. We're trying to understand it and also get in the mind of the author, which is sometimes hard to do because unless you interview the author, who's to say what they really meant, right? So this is where when we're inferencing and predicting and interpreting, they all kind of have overlapping notions to them, but at the same time, they're all separate. So, all right. So this has apparently something to do with experience. Experience of what? Let's try to rip this apart and figure that out. This morning, I looked at the map of the day. So that's an interesting phrase. So because this is a poem, is it a real map or not? All right, that's one of the first things we have to do here. And by the way, I don't always say this, but you should kind of really stop the video, read this yourself, try to understand it, and then see what I say about it. And I also I don't get to interview the authors either, so these will be my interpretations and my understandings of what the passage is going to be about. All right. So this morning I looked at the map of the day and said to myself, this is the way I will go. So if you take this literally, somebody's on a journey, right? So what I'm going to do is write on the right-hand side some summary information or questions that I have. If there's literary stuff, literary devices or techniques, I'm going to write them on this side. And then I might randomly circle or underline things for emphasis. So the person seems to be setting out a journey. Thus shall I range on the roads of achievement. The way is so clear, it shall all be a joy on the lines marked out. So it seems to me this person's planning a trip, and I'm going to put that in quotes, because it's not particularly a physical journey like going from New York to San Francisco or something like that. But it seems to me that they've set out their route, whatever their route is, from one part to the other. Okay, so again, is this figurative? Is this metaphorical? Is there really even a map? Okay, in terms of a terrain, like you're driving from one point to another. So is that what the person's saying or not? Okay, and then as I went, I came upon a place that was strange. 'Twas a place not down on the map. And then I stumbled and fell and lay in the weeds and looked on the day withdrew. All right, so the person plans a journey. Two things kind of go wrong. The first thing is it's not on the map. And the second thing is they tumble. All right, so if this was a real, let's say we're going on a vacation or something, you following it, all of a sudden you're lost, and then on top of that you fall, right? So you have kind of a cascade of problems that happens. Now, if this is figurative, is the journey perhaps the journey of life? Right? Is that what this person is talking about? Could they have perhaps just graduated from school? They're setting out a new career, either randomly or they've forecasted some of what they want. They went to college to be a math major or something, and now they're in a math career, and they plan the future out, and all of a sudden they hit a bump in the road. They got fired. They got a project they never expected to be assigned to, or something like that, and they kind of stumbled. They made a mistake. They made an error. They didn't know how to solve something. So is this metaphorical for that, or is it really a journey? All right. So that's the end of the first stanza, which is the first paragraph in poetic speak. So it's kind of straightforward. And what we want to do is just follow the lines up until the end of every sentence, because poems like to span thoughts across multiple lines. And when they do it, they kind of give us tentative information and kind of drag us along. So non-poems usually don't do that. Dialogue, when there's a non-poem with dialogue, those are often hard for students because you really have to meticulously follow it through. This kind of has the same thing. So this thing where the end of a sentence just keeps wrapping around and around, that's called enjambment in terms of poetry, and it sometimes has meaning. The author sometimes does that on purpose to give us these subthoughts, and then we need to tie them together. So what I like to do is read the poem in the form that the author gave it. At the same time, I want to read it in full sentences. So for instance, well, this isn't too bad, but the author splits it here between these two lines here, right, line 4 and 5, and then it even goes on to up to here, so it ends here. So it's including 6 as well. So what you want to do is take it a piece at a time, but also take it as a unit together. That way we can get the minutiae and also the outer view, so the micro and the macro kind of simultaneously. And I find that helps a lot sometimes, because the author may have a main point and then subpoints, and they're using these poetic devices to kind of taunt us with trying to understand it and figure it out. And again, just like the math questions, if you approach this as if it's a puzzle, you can often get at it. And a thing I often tell students when I'm doing the math sections of exams like this is, if you don't look for the nuance in the math question, you probably will not find it. But if you do look for it, you most likely will find it. Not a guarantee either way. All right. So we're kind of approaching this the same way. We know it's a poem. We know it's figurative. We know all these different techniques are used by poets. So we know there's probably a deeper meaning that's not obvious to us. This is true like in a lot of songs. When you hear a song is actually a poem that's sung, if you want to view it that way. And you can often find out, oh, the person who wrote the song didn't mean what I thought they meant at all. Right? So that's what we have to go here when you finally hear the stories of how a song, the motivation, impetus for a song. So We have to look deeper on these and see if there is at the same thing, just like with the math questions. We also don't want to overanalyze because we don't want to start inferencing and making interpretations that are not there. I call that jumping at shadows, right? You're kind of on edge and walking on eggshells. So we want to make sure that we're involved in thinking about what the author is actually saying and getting a mind meld, a symbiotic mind meld with the author that way. Okay? The second paragraph of the second stanza says, I am learning a little, never to be sure, to be positive only with what is past, and to peer sometimes at things to come as a wanderer treading the night. Right? So you know this is one long giant sentence. When the mazy stars neither point nor beckon, and all the roads, and of all the roads, no road is sure. So that's a mouthful. So let's kind of re-go through it. I am learning a little, never to be sure, to be only positive with what is past. So if we kind of ricochet off the first stanza, the author set out a plan. It didn't go as planned. So the person is kind of saying here that the only thing that's sure is the past, right? We don't, what's going on now, we're kind of even not sure, and we're certainly not sure about the future. And the person's not saying not to plan, but the person's saying the dots of your life could be random and you don't know what's happening either as well, all right? And try to peer sometimes at things to come. So this is, the future. And we're, quote, predicting the future. Not as a as a tarot reader or something like that, but we're just trying to understand our life and how to go there. As a wanderer treading the night. So he's kind of giving it this kind of nomadic feel where, okay, I planned it out and it didn't go as planned, so am I just kind of feeling around in the dark kind of a thing? All right. When the mazy stars neither point nor beckon. So that is interesting phraseology there, because many of you may have heard things like in the 1600s and so on, traveling over the oceans, they realized they can follow the stars, right? So I think it's talking about stuff like that, where the stars are neither pointing them or beckoning means it's calling them, right? There's certain things where we're drawn to certain things. So the author's trying to say these things are there, but he doesn't know which way to go, really. No matter whether it's pointing them to that direction or calling them to go that direction. And he's saying the stars are doing neither. And all the roads, no road is sure. All right? This is kind of like, if anybody's ever read the Robert Frost poem, The Road Not Taken, where basically the author is there and it comes to a fork on the road. And the question is, which fork on the road do you take? And which one's right or wrong? And you kind of don't know until you live your life, whether it was correct or not. There's a lot of metaphors in that poem, so I would suggest people read that poem as well, Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. It's interesting, and even inside that poem, Frost contradicts himself. So it's a very interesting kind of metaphorical thing about the so-called journey of life. And as I said before, some of these about the journey of life, the circle of life, how life repeats itself, renewal, relating to seasons, all these kind of different things are going on. And the choices we make in life, we can plan stuff, but sometimes it just goes the way it goes. Things backfire, things don't work out. It could go the other way too, where all of a sudden you, quote, get lucky, right? And something nice happens in your life. So we have to deal with all those meanderings back and forth, right? The author uses the word wandering. And we should almost plan for that sometimes too, as a general philosophical approach to life. Sure, plan. Many of you listening to this are going to be taking a standardized exam for admission into a school, the SAT, normally a high school, Hunter College High School, or for the SAT or something like that, where you're planning, go to a good college, go to a good high school, get a good job, and live a productive, happy life. But it doesn't always go that way. All right, so that's more or less what's going on here in the second stanza here. And no road is sure, right? That's important. And the author is, in both of these stanzas, the author seems to be being casual. The author's not upset. The author's not panicking. The author is being reflective, which is important, I think, in your journey of life, if that's what it's about. And I'll taunt for a second, coming back to the title. The author seems to be pointing that experience in your life is important, not just for where you're going to, but for even where you're at, okay? And that all the theoretical stuff doesn't particularly matter as much, okay? There's not much literally devices going on here, except for the structure, mainly. Let's see, I don't see any rhyming. There's not alliteration. There's not onomatopoeia. There's some imagery and metaphors here. I didn't think I saw a simile. Was there? No, I didn't see a simile yet. There's no personification, right? That gets used often in lots of literature, but especially in poetry. And the author is basically tapping into our souls here a little bit and asking us to think about our journeys. All right, and then the last paragraph is the most interesting one in the poem to me. So it says, I see those men with maps. Which men with maps, right? Which? What are they talking about? Which men with maps? Okay, and talk who? I see the men with maps and talk who tell how to go and where and why. That's curious. I hear with my ears the words of their mouths, as they finger with ease the marks on the maps. All right, so I'm going to kind of draw a line here. So first of all, to me personally, there's a turning point right here. So basically the author lays out, I kind of planned my journey. I set out my journey. I stumbled and fell, figuratively. And then the author realizes, the only thing that's sure is the past. Otherwise, I'm meandering around a bit. And then the author kind of fast forwards in a way to this thing about people with maps. Now, who are these people? Are they teachers? Are they just wise men? Are they scammers? Are they just ignorant people who claim to know what they're talking about? Right? So if you're seeing men with maps and they're talking about where to go and why, it implies it might be like people giving career advice or somebody who's already lived their life and is trying to be helpful backwards, all right? So, but the author is saying, and the marks on their maps, so their maps have been well used, it's implying, okay? And it gets interesting because it's kind of a second turning point right there. And it says, only one looks robust, lonely, and querulous. And it tells us that means complaining in a whining manner, okay? As if he'd gone to a country far and made for himself a map. Do I cry to him? I would see your map. I would heed the map you have. All right, so this is interesting here. So at this point, the author is kind of struggling to find his journey in life, especially after he stumbled and fell. He made a mistake, or what he had planned on maybe backfired. And apparently he goes to seek. We don't really get told that, but it could be that the author went to seek advice from people. And it was kind of, it's like going in the middle of Times Square and trying to find the best bus to take or something. Or there's these tourist buses and these guys all have competing signs and they're all trying to yell to get your money for you to take their tour. That's the kind of way I'm viewing this. And they're all saying, oh, this is the best way, this is the best way, this is the best way, right? And it can kind of get a little dizzying. And then at the side, he notices there's a guy by himself, if you will. And it's interesting because he says, while these guys have marked up maps, right, this guy made for himself a map. So it seems to me this guy might literally be the wise man. And he's definitely lived his life. And instead of trying to maybe scam you or tell you the best way to do it and all this other stuff, this guy has the experience that the author seems to be wanting to seek. And therefore, he says, I would want your map. So this guy is sitting there self-assured and comfortable, if you will. And he has no reason to stand there and try to pontificate his way to somebody else. So he's kind of looking around, oh, that guy is just sitting there cool, calm, and collected. I'm going to talk to him. And all these other guys trying to sell me their wares and sell me their journeys and all this other stuff. I don't need their maps. I need the guy in the corner who's just quiet, right? That kind of a thing. And this is a question here. It says, do I cry to him? So is it a question or is it a statement? Right? Do I versus I do. Right? So there's no question mark here. But I would see your map. I would heed that map you have. Right? So this is going to be a vocabulary question, so I'm not going to emphasize that this second. All right? So so this is an interesting story. And if you go back to the title one last time, experience. So it seems to me that this, again, let's make believe this person graduated from college or they're at some level in their life. They're probably in their early 20s. They're about to embark on the journey of life. And they kind of set it out all gung-ho. Yeah, let's do this, bro. Fist bump, everybody, yeah. And then it doesn't particularly go as planned. Now, not going as planned doesn't mean it was catastrophic or something went drastically wrong. But the author realizes that, oh, I need to kind of cooperate with nature and cooperate with life and vice versa and try to kind of get somewhere. So, and then he gets more reflective in the second paragraph there. And he's realizing that. And then the third paragraph is really the clincher where he's like, I kind of need to even be more reflective. And perhaps he goes to seek advice and he realizes he's getting a lot of BS in all that. And there's this one guy who just seems really wise who apparently has lived his life already. And, quote, that's his map. So the maps here, I don't think of physical maps with actual routes on them. They're talking about the map of life, the journey of life that you're going to go through. And he likes the fact that that guy who's sitting there robust and lonely and so on, he seems to have a good story to tell. And it's kind of one of those things that happens to a lot of kind of wise people. My father had lived through some things like World War II and other things like that, and he never spoke about it. And that's kind of some of the things, that's the wisdom I wanted. He eventually told me and my brothers and sisters about it, but he was not going around all day talking about that. And he eventually revealed it in a judicious manner. Right, so I think that's part of some of what's going on around here, in terms of getting input from people. So he didn't want the theoretical journeys to life. He wanted to talk to somebody and get ideas from somebody actually lived it. All right. So I'm gonna end this here and recontinue it. So you guys may not know the difference, but just want to make sure the recording gets recorded. All right, be back in 1 second. All right, we're back. All right, so we're going to answer the questions that they are presenting to us. So I will put the questions at the bottom. Okay, there we go. Okay, so when the speaker mentions the map of the day on line 1, so let's go to that. And I will change the color of this to something else, so because I mocked up a lot there. Come on, change the color for me. Let's go with purple. So it's talking about the map of the day right there. That's the question. So when the speaker mentions the map of the day, he's referring to what? Directions to a physical place. So I think at this point it's clear, because there was metaphorical and anecdotal and stuff, that there's not an actual physical paper map. And even if there was one listing some ideas about the journey of life, it's certainly not about going from a town to a town kind of a thing. All right. The hours on the clock. So it's talking about the map of the day, meaning, at 6 o'clock I'm going to wake up, and 7 o'clock I'm going to eat breakfast, 8 o'clock I'm going to be at school. So we know it's not talking about something like that. His religious faith. So this one's kind of a little out there, so it's definitely not that. So a guidebook is interesting because even though we're talking about this metaphorically, could it be a guidebook? So that is a little interesting choice. And then his plans and dreams. So that's all we talked about here. So that is what's going on there. So, and again, his map of the day, he didn't particularly have to write it down. This might be something he thought about for a couple of months, that he talked about with his friends and families, and maybe his guidance counselor and his teacher, and all these kind of things like that. So that is clearly the answer for that one there. And give me 1 second. I just want to make sure the screen is okay. Yeah, the screen is all right. Okay, so if we go to 11, so it says, the best way to describe the speaker in the first 4 lines of the poem. So we're talking about from here to there. So the speaker is setting out, embarking on this journey. So I would assume, without looking at the answers, that it's leaning somewhere maybe towards a tone here. The speaker is certainly going to be energetic, self-assured probably, forward-thinking, motivated, kind of things like that. So sometimes the answers don't match what you think the things would be there. So, it's not there. So, disgruntled, no, that doesn't really make sense. The author's not upset. The author may have gotten a little disgruntled when they stumbled and fell, but that's not what the question's about. The question's strictly about the first 4 lines. So at this point, the author's not disgruntled. In fact, the author's the opposite of that. Confident. Yeah, like I said earlier, the author's gung-ho, so that sounds like a great choice. Humorous. Is the author trying to be funny here? Or jolly or something. So even though I think the author's happy in terms of a tone, I don't think there's any intent to be humorous here. So it's not that. Responsible. Okay, so that one is interesting too. That is, what's going on around there. And then the next one is apathetic. No. Again, especially if the author's being confident and responsible, that implies the opposite of apathetic. Apathetic means they're disinterested. They're not. The author's concerned and gung-ho. That's contrary, really. It's kind of an antonym to the spirit of this. So we're left with 2. We wrote throughout. So confident and responsible. I think the responsibility part, where the author charted out a journey, if you will, and created the so-called map, was definitely responsible. But I think what's going on, especially because there's going to be a compare and contrast to the second stanza, where the author stumbles and falls and ends up where they don't know where they right. They ended up first where they didn't know where they were. So that's what happens. So the author starts out being confident, and then all of a sudden they're like, "What the heck? Where am I?" And then they figuratively fall down. So it's not just being responsible; it's more than that. So it would be confident. All right. That's 11. The change in the speaker in lines 5 through 8. So if we look at that, we're going to basically draw a little line here too, and then 5 through 5, 6, 7, 8 is here. The way is so clear. Yeah, let's do it. The lines are marked out. Yeah, bro, let's do it. And then I come to a place that was strange. Whoa, what happened, right? All right, so the author is surprised, if you will. All right, so let's actually see what the question is. The change in the speaker is a result of what? A minor injury? Well, at this point, you should know it's metaphorical, so there's no, the author didn't literally stumble. They're talking about they kind of made a goof up of some sort, right? They have fear. We don't particularly know that yet at this point, and we know from reading the whole thing, and I also emphasized before that the author seems to be casual through this. They seem to be a very nice thinker, and so I don't see any sense of fear here. You could argue, well, they lost and they fell. Wouldn't that be scary? Yeah, I suppose so, but that's not the change. The change is going from forward thinking to being a little surprised and duped, if you will, on their plans, because their plans didn't go as expected. All right, so there's again a little mini turning point, basically right there as well. So, and I noticed I pointed that out down here as well, right? So the author, in terms of patterns in poetry, right, the author is setting us up in that way kind of thing as well, all right? Paragraph 2, stanza 2 doesn't seem to do that as much, but, and there's only 3 stanzas, so, repetition doesn't have to be every single time, but it could set up a pattern, and the author often repeats and refers back to something else as well, all right? So there's kind of things like that. So I don't think it's fear, but I don't want to cross it out because I know the other answers yet. An unfortunate encounter. All right, so that certainly happens. They got lost and they fell, so we're stuck with B and C. An overturned expectation. So that's even more interesting. I actually put a check mark there. And a dangerous location. So again, I don't think the author is really at somewhere that they're lost and got hurt. This is metaphorical. Now, you might argue, well, isn't the danger metaphorical then? Yes and no, because the author, as we see through the story, the author is able to plan out a strategy based on the previous strategy not working. And they seem comfortable that, okay, this is the way it's going to go and work, and now I know I have to adapt to it. That's the thing where the star was not beckoning at one way or the other, and sometimes as things to come, right? What's in the past is the past, and what's to be coming should still be something exciting in all these other kind of things that might come about. So E doesn't seem to be it. So we're stuck with B, C, and D. So again, there's no fear being struck here in the passage. So there's no fear about the change in the speaker, right? He doesn't become fearful. So it's not that. The change in the speaker is a result of an unfortunate encounter. So yes, he gets lost and he falls. But it's, if we tune into the main idea of the whole passage, that's what it's about. It's about experience. So he hatches a plan. The plan doesn't go as planned, and he kind of needs to not just rehatch the plan, but realize it's never going to go to plan. Right? The best we plan, we're not guaranteed a plan. And it's nice to plan. The author's not saying don't plan, right? The author's still going to look for these other men with maps, including the final guy that apparently he hinges onto to get the more information from. So really, if we talk about it metaphorically, the maps is the journey, right? The meandering through life. Okay, so even though there was an unfortunate encounter, a bump in the road, so to speak, including your journey of life, the real thing was the author was setting out, I got this figured out, let's go live life, and it didn't turn that way. So therefore, it was an overturned expectation. So that's the getting lost and stumbling in the weeds kind of thing there. That's what that means, the essence of it. But C becomes very close to that. I like to hinge two questions to related to each other sometimes and say that C is a subset of answer D. Okay? Because there was an unfortunate encounter, there was an overturned expectation. Right? And they phrased that very succinctly. You have to know what overturned was. And you had to realize, reading it, there was an expectation, right? This guy was confident, self-assured. He was just going to blast off and live this great life. And nobody's saying he didn't. But, it ties into the expectations and stuff of that. Okay? Rue. So where was Rue here? So the vocabulary words on some of these can get nasty for certain. And although it's great to have a good vocabulary, these are normally vocabulary and context questions. First of all, even if you have a good vocabulary, you don't know if it's a primary definition, a secondary definition, or even a slang use. So whether you know the words they're using or not, you still need to look at a context. And that's really the point of this. So let's read that last part. And then as I came at a place that was strange, towards a place not down on the map, and I stumbled and fell and lay in the weeds and looked at the day with rue. Right? So above here, he's all gung-ho. I'll put GH up here. He's gung-ho. And down here, he's got a little Debbie Downerness to him. He's maybe frustrated. He's like, man, what happened here? Right? So he's not. He looked at the day with rue, right? He didn't say, wow, that was fun, I got lost and fell, right? He wasn't going to say that. He was going to say something contrary, or even the opposite of that. So could it mean a difference? Yeah, it could. Anticipation? Well, I think he's anticipating every single part here. So that would be a little too neutral if anticipation was the word. Also, at this point, he's come to the same, as I said before about the Robert Frost poem, he's come to a fork in the road, if you will. He stumbled and fell, and he's like, bro, what do I do? Right? That kind of thing. So he's being reflective as well. Okay? So I don't think it's anticipatory. So we can get that out. With Chera. So just like before when it said fear or whatever, I guess there could be an aspect of this, if you were somewhere and you got lost and fell, you may not be the happiest person in the world, but I don't think it particularly means you're being fearful or in terror. And nothing in here leads us to believe that. In fact, it makes the person be self-reflective. So they're not in terror. Delighted. No, they're definitely not happy that they got lost. Now, one of the things I do sometimes when I need to go on a trip is sometimes I'll plan a room at a hotel and all this stuff. Other times I'll just randomly go nomadically, right? So it could be happy that you actually got lost. I've been on many trips where we just said, let's go that away, and we just drove for hours or something. So it could be a happy experience. But the problem is they're saying it wasn't on the map and he fell. Right, so that's a different thing than just saying we're randomly driving around, that kind of a thing. So he's not delighted, and then regretful. All right, so that seems to come into play here. Again, he's not the happiest camper, whatever, and then we have to rank it against being indifferent. Right, he's annoyed. Right, he went from gung ho to like, oh boy, what happened here? So he's annoyed. He's regretful. He might be indifferent too, but really, he looked at the day with regret. Yeah, that works. He looked at the day with indifference. Yeah, he did that too, but that little subtlety makes the difference there. All right, so that's 13. 14. Give me 1 second. I just want to make sure this is displaying right. Yeah, let me lift it up just slightly. Okay, so when the speaker says the term, when the speaker says he learns to be positive only with what is past, line 10. So let's look at that. he means what? So I am learning a little, never to be sure. In other words, that's what he's learning. I am learning never to be sure, and to be positive only with what is in the past. So again, the past is certain, it happened, right? The future, well, I just hit a bump on the road, and we need to start figuring that out. All right, so we need to find something that tends to lean on mapping what I just said as close as possible. The past is joyful. Yeah, it can be, but that's not what the question's asking us. It's saying when he says that, what does he mean? All right, he's not saying the past was joyful. I think he's just saying the past was certain. So it's not he can't be certain of the future. All right, so I like that one. That almost literally seems to be what I just said. The present is confusing. Again, I think he might think the present's confusing because he hit the bump on the road. But that's not what he means here. He's defining it. He's saying the never to be sure of the future. So that is not about the present. So C is not the answer. Time moves too quickly. I suppose we could really go deep on this and say that's where the author's going, but it seems to be too esoteric. It doesn't really match anything that's going on here and things like that, right? And then all the above, at this point, we ruled that other, so it can't be all the above. And remember, we're taking this in the context that we figured out that this was about experience. So we can't throw at least the topic and the main idea out the window when we're answering some questions, all right? So he just can't be certain of the future. That's all he's saying. To be positive only with what is in the past. He's not saying not to be positive about the future. He's just saying we know what the past is. We don't know what the future is, right? And it's as deep as that and as simple as that at the same time. The men with maps. So this is where it starts getting a little deeper. So that is here in the last stanza. All right. The men with maps, whom the speaker refers to in line 15 through 18 are. All right. So we talked about that a little bit. It's not the most clear part. This is where, to me personally, the passage gets hard. So are they foreign? And even metaphorically, is this because the author is inexperienced? That doesn't particularly mean foreign lands. Like if you're in one country, they're talking about another country. They just give us the word foreign. And with that in mind, that makes foreign a little bit vague and ambiguous, right? So we're not quite clear what that might mean. So if it means another country, we're not quite given enough information to decide that. If it means foreign in the sense of people thinking different and so on, we're also not given that about most of them, and except for the guy he picks. All right, so I'm going to kind of exit outside of it because it just doesn't seem to be the right answer, but heck, maybe it was. So scholarly. All right, so I said before that these men with maps might be teachers and other things like that. But at the same time, that's just one of many possibilities. So, and it says they are. Okay, so that we don't know if they all are or something like that. So I think we can kind of safely rule that be as well. Self-assured, sure. Otherwise, why are they standing out there yelling about their maps, right? So they're definitely self-assured. Are they spiritual? So are these people giving advice? Are they kind of priestly people, monks, rabbis? At some level like that, is that what's going on here? Or because we asked for a guiding light, could this be a godly kind of metaphor? It could be. That could all be true. But the author doesn't go deep enough on that. So I think just like A and B, just because it could be doesn't mean it is, right? And it's saying are, right? I circled are here. So I think that's a little probably too slippery as well. And then patriotic. All right, so nothing in here indicates patriotism at all. We could talk about, well, he's following a map. But we talked before, the map was not metaphorical. And this is not about staying within the borders of your homeland or presenting a testimony to your country or something like that. This is not what this is about at all. So A, B, D, or so E is definitely not it. And the only one we're left with, which was pretty clear, is C. These people are, they're just out there shouting their information, and the person saying, I hear them. And it's almost, they're all giving all the stuff, and it's almost like a blur. It's kind of background noise to this guy because they're all trying to push probably their own agenda on this guy. So we can't really go with that, all right? Okay, 16. Make sure that's showing as well. The split screen thing is not perfect. Okay, let me shrink this a tiny bit. If I can, hold on. All right, there we go. Okay, so it says, when referring to the men with maps, the speaker says, I hear with my ears the words of their mouths. So that was, again, this here, which I just talked about. So the test writers thought that was worth enough to that. Why is he saying that? What is he emphasizing? All right, so how much the men talk. So clearly they're talking. But is he just saying there's a lot of guys out there shouting? No, he's talking about something going deeper. So it doesn't seem to be how inarticulate they are. In fact, he's saying they are articulate. So B doesn't make sense. Okay, the volume of the speakers. Again, I think he's not particularly saying they're yelling, but they're certainly there. And he is doing comparison to the one guy he eventually wants to speak to, who he's saying is just kind of quiet there. He might be muttering to himself, right? It does say he's complaining in a whining manner, but maybe he's complaining about the other guys with the maps, but he's not particularly yelling or fighting with them. He's like, what are these guys saying, or something, or even something like that. The directions they give. So again, if they're all trying to give advice and so on, that might be what's going on there. I hear with my ears the words of their mouths. So the directions they give, and then how little value he places in their words. So that's it. He doesn't heed their advice. He heeds the lonely guy's advice. All right. So he's saying, I can hear them. I follow what they're saying. I'm listening. I'm hearing, but they're not making any sense to me. They're all maybe scammers. They might just have something that is not my journey, and things like that. So this one isn't too bad once we get through them all. And D makes a lot of sense because they are giving directions, so-called advice, right? So again, we know the maps are not real. This is about the life journey. And then finally, the 17th question talks about 19 through 21. So 19, 20, and 21. The speaker likes the man described in there because the man what? So, and only as one looks robust, lonely, and querulous, as if he had gone to a country far and made himself a map. So that's important that the author wrote that. Okay? So he likes that man because he has a more meaningful experience. Yeah. So we don't know that for sure, but that seems to be the indication. So I like that answer as well. The man seems lonely and is in need of a friend. No, that's not what anything about here is about. The man is strong and outgoing. No, it says he's lonely and so on. It says the opposite of that. He feels optimistic. We get maybe a tiny aspect of that. But again, if the man's complaining, probably not. right? So, because it does say complaining in a whining manner. So, in is tired of traveling. Now, we could argue that could be true, but it seems like this guy has a good life and he's self-assured as well. So it doesn't seem to be E. So we're left with that the author wants to basically interview him or be with him or maybe continue his journey with the other guy's journey, right? Nobody's saying the other guy has stopped his journey. So there's something like that, okay? So this is an interesting passage. It's about your journey through life and what your experience means or doesn't mean and planning your future and things like that. All right, so we're going to go do another question. All right, bye. Another passage, sorry.